With a well-organized pack and my food in the mail, I finally feel ready to start the journey. And it feels surreal to be approaching the sweeping mountain ranges of Southern California from the clouds above. A manageable trip from train to car has brought me to the starting line here in Campo, California, the southern terminus of the Pacific Crest Trail. Here at the border of Mexico, I begin on foot with the ultimate goal of Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the contiguous United States, which is several hundred miles from here. In the off-season, Campo feels like an actual ghost town, but it's also an incredibly scenic and textured landscape. I'm already blown away by its solitary beauty. It seems only appropriate to kick off the journey with a delicious beer from Spellbound Brewing, the Major Nelson Pale Ale. This annual release features my absolute favorite hop varietal, which is Nelson Sauvin. This hop is as complex as it is pricey, giving off what most people identify as white wine and gooseberry notes. To me, the tropical fruit aroma often gives way to a delicious herbal finish, most recognizable as the scent of a college dorm. It also distinctly resembles one of the most feared allergens on the trail here in Southern California, the poodle dog bush. I distance myself from Border Patrol, and my feet start to swell under an overweight pack in the desert sun. On day 2, the morning light shines on Lake Marina, as well as its adjacent village and campground. Horned lizards like these are lovably clumsy residents of San Diego County, and are definitely a welcome sight after some late-night encounters with beer coaster-sized tarantulas. Out of breath and running low on water, I take a break next to this San Diego alligator lizard, who doesn't seem to mind the dry heat. After a closer examination, I begin to wonder whether or not he minds the tick nymphs attached just behind his ear. Poor little dude. A few wind turbines dot the horizon along these mountain vistas that border the quiet solitude of several Native American reservations. Day 4 brings me to my first lodging option at Mount Laguna, and the prospect of a rocky marathon, shower, cold Coke, and some clean clothes is irresistible.
Oh yeah.
The sky can paint some pretty magical stuff out here, and somehow the pain of the first week subsides as I approach a major milestone. Guayme Point, which offers some pretty stellar views of the Anza Borrego desert floor from 6,000 feet up, is a perfect place to collect your thoughts. The peace and quiet out here creeps up on you in the best possible way. With a small stone table amongst the scraggly, red-barked, and youthful manzanita bushes, I can't help but love this quiet landscape. Typically, I find IPAs from the East Coast to have a lot of fruity yeast esters on the nose. Carton is good at striking a balance here, as their IPAs, in particular their zip code-oriented 077XX variants, always seem to be complex and still finish clean. I might attribute this particular beer's unique flavor to the Galaxy hop, which most describe as a passion fruit quality. Personally, I get a lot more peach and pineapple, but however you describe it, it tastes pretty damn delicious after a 14-mile hike. Thankfully, a local commuter named Lash gave me a ride in his Mustang to the town of Julian, where pours of wet-hopped IPAs are plentiful, and Nickel Beer Company. Another kind stranger named Riley gave me a ride back to the trail, where I fell asleep to the sound of coyotes howling. A few hours of night hiking later, and the sun began to rise over the Anza Borrego Desert. Packs of instant coffee and sights like this gave me the courage to push forward a few more days through Warner Springs, over Combs Peak, and out to Route 74, where I managed to catch a ride into Idlewild, California. A bustling tourist destination in Riverside County, where the town's mayor is a golden retriever, this place feels like heaven to a hiker. The best beer I could find on tap during the entire trek was fresh from the fermentation tanks of Idlewild Brew Pub. A flight and a good night's sleep at the inn was absolutely necessary nearing the end of week 2. Come morning, I had a spring in my step and mountains to climb. Well, one in particular. Reaching the 10,834-foot peak of Mount San Jacinto is an extremely rewarding moment on the PCT, with views of Mount San Gorgonio, Palm Springs, Coachella Valley, and Joshua Tree. From cactus to clouds or sand to snow, these peaks began with magma and Mesozoic granite hundreds of millions of years ago. Once the granite hardened and the dinosaurs went extinct, these mountains rose from the valley floor, forming about 20 million years ago. Throw in one entire human history, and you're presented with the opportunity to strap on some modern gear and carry up a pounder can of something delicious, like cane head high. This deep orange glass of suds, juxtaposed with the sky blue and sand color schemes, is quite the visual feast, consistently offering a well-done classic IPA profile, with a tropical nose and citrusy, resinous body. This is one that hopheads almost always agree upon. After a restful night in Palm Springs, I continued through the wind farms and passed through Whitewater Preserve. Week 3 was underway, and I had the pleasure of enjoying this sunset as I laid flat on the ground. While night was falling, the city lights began to sparkle, and the stars were in clear view. After bushwhacking through some bear tracks and burn zones north of Mission Creek, I reached a campground and eventually Big Bear Lake. This small but busy main street is quiet during the off-season, but there's some great hiking, motels, and a tasty Himalayan restaurant. Down the road in Wrightwood, the Yodeler is a local craft beer bar that can help you replenish your dusty trail spirits. This orange pale ale hit the spot, and I highly recommend anything on tap from Telegraph Brewing Company. After renting a car and driving it through the cold and misty mountains of San Bernardino and Angeles National Forest, the sun finally came out over the steep and grueling ascent of Mount Baden-Powell. The views here are gorgeous, but the nights spent from Lake Arrowhead to Los Angeles are as memorable to me as any other geographic feature on the trail so far. Approaching Agua Dulce, you can find some pretty awesome looking rocks popping out of the earth. Slabby stratum formations, uplifted from the San Andreas fault line, are the most impressive features here in the 900 acres of Vasquez Rocks Natural Area Park. The dry, scrubby land works well for Hollywood projects of all types. I can't help but geek out a bit knowing that films like Blazing Saddles, Star Trek, The Muppet Movie, Austin Powers, Bill and Ted, Jay and Silent Bob, and more recently the sci-fi western hit Westworld were filmed here. To me, the perfect beer to wet your whistle amongst these tumbleweeds is one of Dogfish Head's most recent year-round additions, Sequench Ale. Limes and dehydrated black limes balance the briny nature of this net-hydrating beverage. Sea salts sourced from the Chesapeake Bay and the coast of Maine were replicated with the help of the National Aquarium, and are dosed liberally for every Sequench brew. Tart, citrusy, and influenced heavily by German beer styles, this guy has been a staple in my lineup for months, and I can't imagine a better place on earth to enjoy this off-centered ale. Well on my way through week 4, I come across the natural energy of Southern California being harvested with these great white giant wind turbines. As far as the eye can see, these mechanisms are working together to funnel electrical power to the cities, while nearby aqueducts carry most of the water. Hikers will find it difficult to tap into these water sources, but thanks to some basic springs created by locals and volunteers, you can barely manage to filter enough of that liquid gold and keep chugging along. Though it's another liquid that catches my eye yet again, as I enjoy this exceptionally refreshing German Hellas lager that boasts a subtle but deliciously funky dry hop character. Hellas Other People is one of the more pedestrian offerings from Tired Hands Brewing Company, but is certainly one of their more crowning achievements, in my opinion. Below is the popular trail town of Tehachapi, California. Here on the southern end of town is Tehachapi Mountain Park, which offers slightly obstructed, yet nearly panoramic views of the town, and what's left of the iconic sandy terrain. If you can manage to hike nearly straight up for a few miles, this vantage point allows you to reflect on the unique culture of the countless welcoming desert towns to the south, before pressing onwards to the looming foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. The familiar sight of charred trees, wind farms, and grazing livestock remind you that mankind has left a mark on even the most remote areas. Finding myself at a dirt road north of Puget Peak, near Sequoia National Forest and Bright Star Wilderness, I begin to realize how far I've come. How far I am from the Mexican border, as well as from my home in New Jersey. 4 weeks of walking and the cumulative weight of solitude, dehydration, and injury sends me down the path towards civilization. But there's still a destination itching in the back of my mind. A few nights of sleep in Lake Isabella and Bakersfield helped me to regenerate and catch a bus up to Lone Pine, California. Another destination made famous for the westerns filmed here, up in the hills. It's also home to the eastern face of the Sierras, including the famous and daunting profile of Mount Whitney. After a cold night in the portal, I rise at 2 a.m. and begin the ascent under a full moon. Finding it hard to contain myself, I climb past trail camp and fire up through the 99 switchbacks into Sequoia National Park. After passing over the crest and traversing the other side of the mountain, you get even more views to knock your socks off. The end is in sight. Approaching the summit's edge and looking down over the Whitney Zone, Alabama Hills, and Inyo Mountains feels surreal and profoundly humbling. The highest mountain in the lower 48 states is the final destination of my journey, so I had to choose carefully which beer to feature here. Surrounded by the dramatic high country of California's Sierra Nevada mountain range, I can think of no better place to uncork and enjoy Mother Nature's gift of spontaneity in a bottle. Wrangled up and packaged by my friends at the Referend Bier Blendery, I chose Berliner Messe Sanctus, a turbid mash base with H hops and local New Jersey Chambourcin grapes, re-fermented in port barrels. These mountainside-grown grapes were racked into the beer day of harvest and left to mature. The results are some truly exquisite flavors of black cherry yogurt and Concord grapes, with hints of blackberry and nutty chocolate, that I assume come from some cooperation between Chambourcin and Port. At 9 a.m., at 14,500 feet elevation, every bird, marmot, and blistered human being showed some interest in this wild fermented beer, and you better believe I offered some to share. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the views of California and some of the beverages of my home state of New Jersey. None of this could be possible without the protection of our public lands. And while this is not an inherently political web production, I think politics affects our well-being as a species, as a whole. So a quick message. Congress passed a resolution this year calling for 640 million acres of public forests to be devalued and sent to the chopping block. After an outcry from outdoors and hunting communities, this was halted, but the threat remains. In April, President Donald Trump he signed an executive order to review public monuments since 1996, ones with lands greater than 100,000 acres. So places like Giant Sequoia, Santa Snow, Mojave Trails are just three of the national monuments that fall in neighboring territories of the Pacific Crest Trail that are endangered. And then this past couple weeks, Trump proposed shrinking Bears Ears National Monument by up to 90%. I think it was called the greatest land reduction federally in the history of the United States. He did this without any Navajo tribal consultation, and this proposal was met with protests, both from the general public and as well as several of the Native American tribes that it affects out in Utah. To me, it seems completely un-American. If it's something that concerns you too, I'd like to simply encourage you to talk to your local representatives, keep voicing your opinion and spread awareness of how politics shape our country and shape our land. Anyway, if you'd like more information on the PCT, on the Pacific Crest Trail, I would highly recommend checking out the Pacific Crest Trail Association. It's been a wonderful resource and preservation effort since the 70s, and you can read and learn and volunteer and donate all at their website, www.pcta.org. Thanks again for joining me. Hopefully there's more content on the horizon, but for now, that's it for me. I'm signing off. Thank you. Happy trails. Cheers.